We've now come to Chronicles. Here we're going to see the God who elects, chastens, and restores. Chronicles is the last book in Jesus' Bible, which ends exactly where Ezra and Nehemiah begins. Yes, you heard me correct. It ends where Ezra and Nehemiah begins, recalling Cyrus's decree that the Israelites could return to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. Now, of all the books in the historical narrative portion of Jesus' Bible, it's Chronicles alone that is out of chronological order. And this is likely to highlight that the restoration described in Ezra and Nehemiah was not the ultimate restoration. The Messiah and his kingdom were still to come. And when one reads the story beginning with Adam and continuing through David and Solomon and the history of the Judean kings, one can actually track a line of kingdom hope that needed to be reawakened for those living in exile. So some of the distinctive highlights of Chronicles, things that you may or may not have noticed. Most of us are used to reading 1st and 2nd Chronicles directly after 1st and 2nd Kings in our English Bible reading programs. And because of this, we may actually miss some of the elements of Chronicles that stand out. For example, did you know that the first word in Chronicles is Adam? The very figure, the first man, Adam, which links then the history of those who were enduring the exile all the way back to the beginning. Those living in exile were still part of God's grand purposes to create a kingdom where humans rule as his representatives over the world. They were part of God's grand kingdom-building plan that stretched back all the way to that offspring promise in Genesis 3:15. Did you know that Chronicles never mentions David's sin with Bathsheba or Solomon's idolatry? Why not? Did you know that whereas the book of Samuel tells us that Yahweh incited David to take the census, which is sin, in Chronicles, we learn that it was Satan who instigated the census. Why the change? What's the chronicler wanting to focus on? Did you know that whereas Kings goes back and forth between the northern and the southern kingdoms, Chronicles stays focused on Judah in the south, all in order to highlight God's promises to David and the significance of corporate worship at the temple? Did you know that Chronicles tells us that child-sacrificing king Manasseh, 2 Kings 21, was actually exiled to Babylon, and that there he repented, and that God restored him back to his throne in Judah? Why would the author of Chronicles recast Israel's history in this way? What contribution does the chronicler's history make to the message of Jesus' Bible? Well, this book ends with eschatological hope and sets us up for turning the page to read Jesus the Messiah, the son of David, the son of Abraham. As I already noted, Chronicles ends with Cyrus's decree that whoever is among you of all of his people, may the Lord his God be with him. Let him go up. 2 Chronicles 36:23. Now, Isaiah was the first to anticipate a two-stage restoration. In fact, Isaiah, over 150 years before this happened, predicted that a certain Cyrus would cause Israel to return to the land and rebuild God's temple palace. Thus we read in Isaiah 45:28, Yahweh says of Cyrus, he's my shepherd, and he shall fulfill all my purposes. Saying of Jerusalem, she shall be built, and saying of the temple, your foundation shall be laid. Isaiah predicted that one named Cyrus would return Israel to the land, but that was only stage one of the restoration. This Cyrus would then be followed by Yahweh's servant person, who would secure reconciliation with the living God by saving a global people. Think about Isaiah 53:11. Out of the anguish of his soul, he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many from every tongue and tribe and people and nation to be counted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. A two-stage restoration already predicted by Isaiah. Cyrus was only stage one. So in ending Jesus' Bible with Cyrus's charge, what it does is it actually heightens hope for stage two when the Messiah, that messianic servant that Isaiah had predicted, would actually rise. We are now looking for Yahweh's servant person who will triumph through great tribulation and actually secure the salvation and the new creation that all of us find ultimately in Jesus. So I summarize the book of Chronicles this way: by starting with Adam and considering the brightest and highest moments of the Judean kings, Chronicles calls the reader to wait for God to fulfill his covenant with David by raising up the righteous Son of God from Judah to reign over a united Israel, to build the ultimate eschatological temple, and to cause the people of God to flourish by worshiping God in his presence. The book of Chronicles.